Hello, welcome to another Brookbanks podcast. My name's Ben Wakeling. I'm your host. I'm very pleased to have with me today Lee Bowers, who is a director in the Brookbanks Structural Engineering Group, and Lucy Wildesmith, who is another director, but this time in the Mechanical and Electrical Engineering Group. Sorry, always a bit of a mouthful. Uh, Today we're going to be talking about design coordination, specifically focusing obviously on both Lee and Lucy's groups. So before we get into that, I'll ask you both just to give a brief background to yourselves. Lee, let's start with you.
Hello, yes, my name's Lee Bowers. As Ben says, I've been with Brookbanks for about 5 months now. So I'm working out of our new Cambridge office, which is great, enjoying it. Director of the structures team and helping lead our team. Yeah, all good.
Excellent. And Lucy?
Yeah, I'm Lucy Wildesmith. I'm one of the directors of the MEP group. I'm mechanically biased. I've been with Brookbanks for, well, since 2013, so my 13th year, and I've been in the industry about 28 years now. So worked on various projects, various sectors, and lots of coordination with structural engineers.
Any projects which stick out to you that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, so I've got quite a few that I'm quite proud of over the years. My husband hates it if we go to London and I'm going around pointing out all the buildings I've worked on. But I have one just up the road from me, which is Inspired Villages Caddington. That was the first net zero retirement village in the country. So I'm really proud of that one, particularly because it's quite local. So I like to send my friends up there and explain where the energy centre is and go for all the services. And obviously they're really, really interested in that.
Oh, I'm sure there are. I bet. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so design coordination then. Another topic that admittedly I'm slightly familiar with, but not an expert in, so we'll be reliant on mining the expertise of you both during the conversation. First of all, then, let's talk about the key aspects, the key aspects of building engineering that overlap the two groups, the structural group and the M&E group. So what are the main things that you think of? And Lee, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, of course. So obviously we overlap massively in the building sphere. Every building needs a structure. Every building needs to be serviced. It needs power. It needs heating. It needs lighting, etc. And the two are massively linked. And basically, if they're not done in the right way, the building won't be a success. It's quite simple. And the success of a structure does rely on excellent coordination with the building services element of the building. And the architect has a lot to play there as well. The architect's often a mediator between the two of us, which helps. But yeah, we need to allow for it in our design, and MEP need to work around our structure sometimes as well. So it can be tricky, but it's vital. That's my view.
Yeah, I think from our sort of perspective, it's all about coordination and talking to each other and doing that early enough. Um, Obviously, we have to be very respectful of if there's no structure, the building falls down. But we also need to make sure we can get our services through. And I think that's the difficulty that we have. Often, sometimes MEP is left last, and then that causes us complications if we can't get in the sealing void spaces that we have. So for me, it's about coordination, talking to each other early enough, and just saying to Lee, we might need a hole there, or we might need to change something in your structure so that we can get our services through.
Lee, you mentioned there about the success of a structure, that good coordination is vital to the success. And this could be a daft question, but what does success look like in a structure? What is because there'll always be potentially workarounds on site if there's clashes and so on, but obviously that needs to be avoided. So what does a successful building look like to you?
Well, I think it's one where getting that coordination at the right time is part of it. If you're finding you're on site and you're having to do all of these mad workarounds, and things become a bit Heath Robinson, for a better phrase, I'm sure there's one out there, and you start seeing details that you think, oh my God, what is that? That's poor planning. That's not successful. I think something where you look at a building, you say, oh, well, that's clearly seamless. That plant enclosure on top of the roof there is clearly catered for and has been thought about for a long time. Or, well, that penetration is in a nice part of the building. It's out the way. That works nicely. That too can work. So I think you find success really when the thing is being built. Uh, when a project's finished, it's often quite hard to say, well, clearly services structure coordination was poor in that building, because people find a way to deal with it, but it's the headache when you're dealing with it that's really the mark of success, I think, or a lack of, I should say.
Yeah, I think just from my aspect on there, Ben, for me as a mechanical engineer, some of my plant is quite big, it's quite heavy, it takes up quite a lot of space. Clients want the end service, but they don't want to see it and they don't want to hear it. So for me, a successful project is one where nobody's actually noticed my services. They just appear, and there's no bulkheads, there's no noise from the voice from the roof, there's no vibration. You're not looking up at your roof and seeing all my plants because we've coordinated early enough that it's all just worked seamlessly.
That's a really good point, actually. That yeah, it's quite an interesting one. That success for you is people not even noticing that you've done your job properly, which is because and if you haven't done your job properly, then it really does get noticed, and things rattle and make noise. And um, okay, and you mentioned both of you about the different parties involved in coordination. So you've got the structures, you've got the M&E, you've got the architect, and you'll have many, many more, I'm sure. Do you find in your experience that there is um, often kind of friction between those parties and disagreements and conflicts, or have you found that most of the time it's relatively healthy and people are trying to work with each other? Or I suppose it changes from project to project, I'm guessing.
So, so I feel that if the coordination is done early enough, then there isn't any conflict. If the coordination is left too late, then there is conflict. Because I had one project that we took on stage 4 that someone else had done at stage 3, and there hadn't been any coordination. So there was lots of structural beams with some castellations in, but not very many. And I had a lot of big ductwork to get through. I would say that took us probably a month to get that building correct, all done on Revit. The beams had to be prefabricated, so it was really important that we got it right. Any holes that had to be built on site were hugely expensive for the contractor. The contractor had a program he had to stick to. We were taking a long time to get our coordination correct because we just had no space underneath these beams. So that in some ways could cause conflict because the structural engineer wants to get his stuff out to get prefabricated so he's not delaying the program. We want to make sure our services will fit, and the contractor just wants to get going. So that sort of thing there, I think, can occasionally cause conflict. But I think the real key is discussion, talking to each other, sharing the models, and just being honest about the sizes of the information that we need, and allowing time in design programs to do that. I don't know how you feel about that from a structural engineer, Lee.
No, I think that's totally fair. I mean, could you say perhaps maybe a decision should be made earlier, that actually the form of structure that was taken early stage might have been, the wrong one, and perhaps it sounds like this is steel. These are I'm sounding traditional steel work with completely generally solid webs, the depth of the beam, and the openings are all bespoke, right? Could it have been that one day back at RIBA 2 or whatever, someone said we should use cell beams, with openings that are formed automatically, or even concrete flat slab. I mean, that's your dream, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's the
love
M&E
that.
dream, a concrete flat
A
slab.
whole clear ceiling void. Can you imagine it?
I quite like flat slabs as well, but and I think, to go back to your point, Lucy, it is about making those decisions at the right time, isn't it? If you decide, or if you get to the point at RIBA 4 where you've got this unwieldy structure that hasn't really taken into account that there's an awful lot of suspended service runs, you're going to find you're in a spot of difficulty, and that links back to the success, Ben. Really, that's what I think successful coordination is when you don't have these issues that Lucy mentioned. They are a nightmare. They really can be. But uh, we also need to say that, in a completely selfish way, and Lucy will say the same for mechanical electrical, the optimum structure is not something that's optimized around building services and vice versa. It really isn't. The optimum structure is light. It's quite deep, I have to say, because that's often cheaper and lighter than shallow and thick. And that just doesn't really help M&E. It really doesn't
Yeah.
sometimes.
And I think you've also got to be very conscious of the fact that heights are important, for planning aspect, for cost aspect. Yes, you could have your structural area, or I could have a lovely building services aspect, but that adds huge cost and height to the building that doesn't help the client at the end of the day. And that's what we want to be doing, helping our
So
client.
it's collaboration and a bit of compromise as well, from the sounds of it. Everyone, structures will want their favorite, or best structure. M&E will want their, all their items. But yeah, everyone has to compromise a little bit for the overall. And
I think it's also looking at detail as well. So we're talking there about large buildings. You've also got, we do quite a lot of residential, and when we're looking at houses where we don't get any ceiling void, and then sometimes we have to go through
mm,
joists. So that's always a really interesting coordination aspect as well. And for us, it's making sure that the timber company give us adequate drawings to coordinate with, ideally easy joists so we can go through the webs. I mean, we had one project where it was supposed to be easy joists, but they put solid joists in because it's cheaper. And then I'm doomed. I can't get anywhere. I can only go one direction. And that one ended up with some drop ceilings, and that's not what the client wants. So then we've got to coordinate where they are, put them into wardrobes, things like this. And all of that just takes time. Whereas if it was put in early enough that it should have been easy joists, it would have made everybody's life much, much
yeah,
easier.
and this I suppose goes back to something that I'm familiar with in my role in the commercial group is a recognition that sometimes the cheapest cost up front isn't always the cheapest cost at the end of the job, and you'll either have, in that situation, you'll have contractors going in drilling holes everywhere, or you have to drop the ceilings to make it work, and neither of which is particularly great for the end user, I suppose. So, Lucy, without being rude, you mentioned that you've been in the industry for a long time. Uh, how, in your experience, has technology developed over the years from when you started to now?
Yeah, so it has developed hugely. When I first started, it was in the days of, I used to sit on a drawing board with my pen and draw everything out, get sent to the CAD department. We had a computer shared where we'd go and check our emails. I don't think you could imagine things like that these days. The young guys just look at me oddly if I say that. My Friday afternoons were spent folding drawings, posting them out. That sort of thing doesn't happen. So I think development's really, really changed. In those days, we would have had to had meetings with structural engineers, had sections, manually measure, draw sections through going down. The introduction of Revit has just helped hugely with coordination. I think being able to draw it 3D, being able to share those models, integrating those models, just helps so much more on site with less clashes. And we try and we will do occasional 2D projects, but anything that's complicated, we'll always try and do for our Revit team.
What about you, Liz? Has much changed in your time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I did miss drawing boards just, but I did spend many Friday afternoons folding big A1 drawings. So that's kind of where I was. I mean, when I started back in 2008, CAD was well established. It was a big thing, but that must have been a massive game changer. Just CAD in itself, in that you're getting these electronic drawings and you're able to overlay them automatically on your drawings rather than getting out light boxes and trying to trace over and things like that. But that was one thing. Emails as well. I know it's going back even more, but that's a massive part of coordination. Being able to talk to each other in a quicker form. Not necessarily on the phone. Phone's great, don't get me wrong, it really is. But emails are good in that respect as well. But you can't deny Revit, as Lucy said. That's massive, hasn't it? Not because what we can do on the structure side, and I'd imagine it's the same for Lucy's team, is we can actually link we have an analytical model that actually checks the stresses of a structure and is really vital to our sizing elements. We can link the analytical model to the Revit model that then's linked to the M&E model and the architectural model. So we've got these massive links going on, and without Revit, that just couldn't happen. So it's, yeah, massively, and it'll be interesting to see what's next. With things like AI and the like, this could just go on and on really, and just help make it even more seamless.
Yeah, I think also Teams helps, and actually being able to share those models on a screen quickly and easily. We do our teams in our design team meetings, but we'll also often phone up the architect or or the structural engineer on Teams and just share the models and go, well, we've got a problem here, and then you can just sit and sort it out, and it takes a few minutes then, and that saves a huge amount of time.
Oh yeah, but also even get good old fashioned around the table, spread some drawings out, get your pens out. That's also a powerful tool because not only is it brilliant for coordination, I find that is also really good for relationship building, which is also massively important for coordination. I think it has to be said that you will coordinate your designs better with an M&E engineer you like, with an architect you like, and one you don't like or get on with. It's just harder. Do you know what I mean? So relationships is massive.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's massive throughout the whole construction industry, isn't it? A lot of the successful construction project will rely on relationships as well as all the technical stuff that goes behind it.
I
So,
think it's all about teamwork, isn't it? Because you can't build a development on your own, can you?
no, exactly. Is there a small part of you, Lucy, that misses the manual drawings and getting on a drawing board and sketching out
I might still do the odd little drawing.
just to keep yourself sharp?
Yeah, but I don't think so. Um,
Fair enough. Yeah, the old days are gone.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and the 3D, we used to sort of attempt to draw 3D. I think as engineers, it's very much about getting your ruler out, anything you can draw with a straight line.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's always easier, isn't it? And then just very quickly, Lee, just digressing slightly, have you seen much in the way of technological and kind of material advancements on site? I'm thinking more about the actual materials used. Has there been much progression in the way of clever design of people building taller with lighter frames now than they were 20, 30
Oh,
years ago?
yeah, without a doubt. Things are getting thinner, things are getting lighter as well at the same time. And a part of that is helping to, I think the part of the reason for that is the squeeze on heights of buildings, and that's linked to service voids as much as it's linked to structural depth, and there are loads of clever solutions that amalgamate the two now, which I think is really good. You've got cell beams which are fantastic. There is no service zone with cell beams. It's in the structural depth. Flat slab is brilliant because that's naturally the thinnest type of structure you can get. But there's even methods where you're sort of amalgamating service runs within more denser structure as well. And there'll be more as well. It really is something that we're seeing more innovative thought around.
Excellent. You both mentioned flat slabs a few times now. I have to say, I've got no strong feelings myself about flat slabs, but it may be something to look into. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing out. This may be a basic question, but when's the best time to coordinate designs? Presumably, the earlier the better.
It's a really hard question to answer. The reason being is, yeah, if you do it early and you've got the information there, perfect, perfect. But if you do it too early, like let's say you, sorry, Lucy, what was that?
I was just going to say it's the level of information that you have for the level of coordination that you can
Oh,
do.
100%. But also the risk of change. If you're running into it, head first at RIBA 2 or even the start of RIBA 3, there's a good chance things will change after and you'll have to do it all again. But the costs for everyone there is a problem. But equally, in my opinion, there are some things at RIBA 2 that need to be known. If Lucy would be good enough to tell me that there's a massive chiller that goes on the roof,
Yeah, and it
RIBA
weighs
2.
this amount.
Yeah, exactly. RIBA 2 is the time to get it in because we might then say, oh, okay, that little tin roof we had on there isn't going to work. It needs to be something more robust. So for big ticket items, earlier the better. But there's some things you just need to wait until the information's there, really, and that's often RIBA 3, 4.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the key at the early stages is as Lee said, the heavy things and the large items of kit, but also the height needs to be defined. So our largest ductwork needs to be known. Risers are a key, which is a really interesting one that we've found quite often recently, in regards to sort of fire dampers and fire separation. When you do RIBA stage 2, quite often consultants will just put their ductwork next to each other, and then you get to RIBA stage 4 and you have to put your fire damper in, and then you have to coordinate that with the fire ceiling, and then they want 200 mil between your dampers, which then means that actually your riser is X amount larger. And we've had many projects recently where we've taken them on again from others where we're then going, oh, we need a bigger boxing in, or somebody says, oh, my structure can't take those two great big holes through it. So I think you have to make sure that when you're doing your block plans at stage 2, you have that experience from the detailed stages to incorporate that. So you're not working through that detail at stage 2, but you're putting the concepts in. And I think if you don't do that, you can have real trouble later on.
And what kind of in an ideal world, all the designs get done before anything commences on site, and we all know that that very, very rarely happens, if ever. Um, but what kind of factors on site can change designs? Because you can, as I say, you can get on site with everything, and you think everything's fully coordinated, everyone's had their input, but there always seems to be changes on site. And what kind of what influences that? Is it well, you tell me.
So I think for us, sometimes it's about level of detail of information that's provided. We had one project where the stills were all in, but the coating of the stills hadn't been detailed on the Revit model, and they'd put painted it plus put boxing in around it, which actually added another depth. So then when our services went, they were like nearly hitting the ceiling. And that was a stage 2 4 project. So things like that. It's about getting detail right when we are doing that stage 4. I think the other key aspect from our side is client change, and we always have client change, and that's fine. We have to work around that, but sometimes that can be quite dramatic, and then again we've just got to work together to come over, get over that and make sure that we can make it work. I would have thought on construction it's probably more my side that changes than yours, isn't it, Lee? Because once your structure's done, you've got to build it, haven't you?
Yeah, that's it. I'm walking away, dusting my hands. But no, that's it. One of the there's a point in time where often the M&E designer changes hands over to contractor, and that can be quite problematic because the contractor often has different thoughts about how things should be done. Sometimes it's not a problem, but sometimes a contractor might say at RIBA 4 quite late, or even RIBA 5, that opening's got to move, should got to move. Um, and the previous M&E designer that you would have worked through that nice, excellent detail or location has disappeared and isn't there to work on it. That's one thing. But I think the real key is from a structural point of view, we need to be sympathetic early to the fact that a building will need services in it, and it's you said experience, Lucy, didn't you? That's probably the right word, is having experience at the early stage, knowing that we don't know the details of the services yet. We won't know for a little while, but we need to make sure our scheme design, our concept design is sympathetic with the fact that it's going to be there and it's going to be needed. So, but yeah, when the frame's up, often it's quite hard, and you have to get your core drill out to sort things out.
Yeah, and I think you did pick up on a key point there. Once you do your design, and sometimes you might do a stage 4 with the main contractor, and then the subcontractor comes on, and he'll say, "Oh, if you follow this route, I've got less pipe work. I want to do that," which then affects all of that coordination. Or he'll change they love to change all of their actual equipment because they've got better deals with certain manufacturers. And, at the end of the day, this is about cost and making money, isn't it, for everybody involved? So that can then change weight or change dimensions or change plinth sizes. So all of that adds to that coordination, and it's generally always, well, it's always achievable because we always finish our projects, but it's just doing it in the best way, I think.
And I suppose yeah, it's easy for someone to think that a designer or an engineer's role kind of fizzles out as the job starts, but actually that's not the case at all. Everyone will need to keep you both involved in your respective disciplines throughout the whole life of the site and probably beyond, I presume. So good, excellent, thank you. So you both work for Brookbanks. Um, how do you two work together to make sure that when you get a project in, or when we get a project in, because I'm Brookbanks as well, um, that your designs are aligned and you're collaborating and talking with each other?
I think that's key, Ben. Talking, communicating. It needs to be almost daily. Regularly. We need to bug each other with everything about the project, and we do that. So one of the issues you can have with all of the design team, and I'm sure Lucy will agree, this is architect, M&E, others, contractors, subcontractors, is the fact that you'll do your design, you'll send your drawings out, and you won't hear anything, and you'll get a pack of drawings from someone else, and they'll be completely different to what you had and unexpected, and no one's told you. You just not talked about what the changes are that have happened. So we make sure that I give Lucy a heads up if I've got something I'm going to put on my design, and I'm sure Lucy will do the same when it comes to equipment and things like that. Talking about change before you make the change is massive, and that's what we do really.
And I think also, as Lee said, highlighting that change to us, because if we just get a revised model, but we don't know where that change is, that then takes us a lot of time to find that, running clash detections and everything. Whereas if they say, oh, I've got a problem with this column, I need to move it, or sometimes the client will say, I don't want that column in the middle of my restaurant, I want to move it over here. That then has complications on the connecting beams. So as long as those discussions involve everybody, so we could then say, oh, that's going to cause us an issue coming across that area. But if we all work through it together and we know what's going on, it just makes it more seamless, doesn't it, and quicker for the project.
Yeah, and I think Lucy, because we're the same organisation, and we're Brookbanks, we're promoting Brookbanks, and if someone's gone to us with an M&E and a structures project, we're massively incentivized to make that coordination completely painless, seamless, and better than what it would be if we had two different organizations working on those designs. And that motivates us to make it happen really, and we use all of the tools available to do that.
Yeah, I think that's true, isn't it? Because if there is an issue on site, it's not Lee's issue, it's our issue. So we want to make sure there isn't any issues.
Very good. Finally, then, before we close, because we're beginning to run out of time, what would be your one key piece of advice to, say, a developer or someone who is about to start on a tall building in a city centre somewhere, and they've got the consultants appointed, uh, but everyone's starting with a relatively blank piece of paper? What would be your key piece of advice to that developer to make sure that everything gets off on the right foot? Lee, we'll go to you first.
Okay, yeah, I think making sure the team is ready to collaborate and foster that relationship building early. If obviously if it's Brookbanks, that's great. The M&E, the structures team are really closely knitted together, but often, as we said, it's a different organisation and sometimes a completely new one. So I think the developer needs to get them together, get the information ready as well, and start to collaborate early. And that's all about getting people to know each other, relationships, and talking and saying, this is it, this is what we need for the rest of the project. That's my view anyway.
Yeah, I think mine's the same. It's about making sure every team member understands the end game, what they're trying to achieve, what's key importance to the client, and making sure that we're looking at everything early enough, and also throughout the project looking at sufficient detail, not cutting corners.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. We're out of time. If anybody listening wanted to find out a bit more, what's the best way to get in touch? Lucy, we'll go to you first this time.
So all my information is on the Brookbanks website. There's a link on there you can get straight through to me, where you can email me. Can also obviously give Brookbanks telephone numbers a call and give us a call. And I'm on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And Lee?
Yeah, similarly, the Brookbanks website has all of my details, so feel free to contact me via that or LinkedIn. I'm based in Cambridge. Anyone in the area, feel free to contact me for a chat.
Excellent. Thank you. Absolutely. Brookbanks.com is the website. You can head over there. You can get in touch with Lee, Lucy, myself, anybody else in the team, and send us a query if you wanted to. But that's it. We're out of time. So it remains for me to say, Lucy, Lee, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time for another Brookbanks podcast.